Awesome. So hello everyone and welcome to our second Lift mentoring webinar, this semester. My name is Chris Campbell, pronouns he, him, and his. And I'm one of the assistant directors in the Office of Multicultural Education. The Office of Multicultural Education, in partnership with Alumni Relations, the Bishop Healy Committee, the LGBTQ Alumni Network, and 8C First Generation Alumni Network started the Lift Development Program last semester. The goal of Lift Development is to encourage students to find their voice, support students as they learn to lead from the intersections of their identity, and coaching students through transformational milestones. Lift Development focuses on strategies to build social capital, increase financial literacy, and establish networks for career success. The session for today, we will feature Holy Cross alumni working in the STEM field. The goal of this panel is to take a multidisciplinary look at people of color in the STEM workforce as they share their experiences. Our hope is that the panelists, their deeply personal stories and trailblazing accomplishments will resonate and motivate students and young alumni on this call to feel emboldened to pursue a career in the STEM field. For engagement today, the focus will be on the alums, but I welcome everyone to just drop questions in the chat box throughout the session. Please note that we will have time at the end for questions. Once again, welcome. And without further ado, I will now turn it over to the panelists to introduce themselves before we dive into the questions for today. So anyone wants to kick us off and get us started?
I guess I can start. Andre Isaacs, class of 2005. Pronouns he, him, his, as you can see in the box. Was hoping more people would show up. Maybe they will, but I was a chemistry major while I was a student in college. And clearly I currently work at the College of the Holy Cross, where I'm now an associate professor in chemistry. And I guess one thing I miss about Holy Cross is literally nothing because I still work here. So it's been a great time. So I'll leave it at that for my introduction.
I'll go next. My name is Sheila Namirembe, and I go by she, her, hers. I'm the class of 2015, same class as Chris. I was a chemistry major while at Holy Cross. I live in Newton. Right now, I work at Vertex Pharmaceuticals as a medicinal chemist in Boston. I finished my PhD in organic chemistry from Boston College last year during the pandemic. It was still going on. One thing I miss about Holy Cross is Kimbo dining, because I hate cooking. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Mei Ling. I guess my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm currently a senior scientist in Novartis Pharmaceuticals, and so I work in the cell therapy field, trying to bring these novel cell therapies to patients. While I was at Holy Cross, I was a biology major. I was also on the crew team, and I graduated in 2014. And very much like Sheila, I also graduated with my PhD from Hopkins last year. And so now I'm up in the Boston area again. And one thing I really miss about Holy Cross is being able to live in very close proximity to your friends and your classmates, because having to schedule time to see them is much more difficult, especially during a pandemic. But when you were at Holy Cross, it was very easy to just go across the hall, talk to your friends, talk about academics, anything. And I definitely miss that.
Hey everyone, this is Kenny Rogers. I'm in Maryland, Baltimore, Maryland now. Class of 03. My preference for pronouns are non-gender, they or them, but he or him are also fine. When I was at Holy Cross, majored in psychology, did a Africana studies concentration also. However, that wasn't my career objective. In the end, work as a software developer at the FDA now. So I'm happy to join you all.
Awesome. Thank you all. I for one, I'm excited to hear from y'all and your brilliance for tonight's session. So let's jump right into it. So what or who inspired you to pursue a career in STEM?
So for me, I knew I wanted to be a biology major when I went to Holy Cross, but I entered thinking I wanted to be pre-med because that was in my mind the only way that you could kind of help people. But then my freshman year biology class, which was taught by Professor Sheehy, she was the first one that kind of opened my eyes to the idea that research was a valuable career as well, and that you can actually bring novel therapies to patients without being the actual doctor that administers them. And so that was the first time that I ever knew that research was even an option as a career. I had never heard about grad school. I didn't know what any of this was at the time. So she was really transformative and just opening my eyes to different possibilities that existed beyond the doctor route.
I would say my journey into a career in STEM started pretty much when I was a high school kid back in Kingston, Jamaica, which where I grew up. And my really inspiration was my uncle, who was the first member of my extended family to attend medical school. He dropped out and decided to become a teacher and educator. He taught physics, math, and chemistry, which he was excellent at. And so he was my first mentor in the STEM field. It wasn't until I went to college, actually. He died. His untimely death really left a mark on me, because that kind of made me realize where mentorship is very critical to success for a lot of minority students. And not having that kind of mentor in my life and someone to guide me through this process was very devastating for me. But fortunate for me, I came to college and I found more mentors, surprisingly in cisgendered white men who were on the diversity bandwagon and thought it was important to like encourage me to invest in my success, pushed me to enroll in courses that I didn't think I was capable of doing, applying for some internships, and in helping me to prepare for graduate school. So I did find my mentors in my faculty. But it really started from when I was in high school, in the fortunate situation I had having an uncle who was also in the sciences.
I think that thank you for sharing that, Andre. And so I think that's a good segue to the next question. And so on the topic of mentorship, right? Did y'all have any mentors during your time on the Hill? And if yes, if you found mentors during your time at Holy Cross, how did they prepare you or help you with your discernment to enter the field?
I can speak to that. So when I came in as a first year student at Holy Cross, I was part of the passport program. So with the passport program, they asked us what we were interested in, and I told them by then I was interested in biochemistry, but Holy Cross City doesn't have a biochemistry major. I don't know if that's still the case right now. So I was paired up with Professor Belen in the biology department, who was, I think, one of the heads of the biochemistry concentration back then. So for me, having him as my first year mentor really helped understanding that, there was someone who understood like the pressures of being a science major, but also navigating your first year of college. That was very important. And then my second year, when luckily Professor Isaacs was hired, I remember getting bounced out of organic because I think I woke up late for registration of classes. So he was teaching an 8 a.m. class. And anyone who didn't have a class to take, Andre was the new faculty member. So I was signed up for, I was like, oh, it's going to be an 8 a.m. class. I don't know how I'm going to manage. But that literally changed the course of my entire education at Holy Cross. Because of him, seeing a person of color standing in front of me, teaching organic chemistry, being excellent at his communication, that like sowed seeds of confidence in me and hope that, hey, this is actually possible. He made me love the class more than like any other faculty member at Holy Cross. So thank you, Andre. I'm sure so many students attest to this. So that was very important in terms of like seeing people who are like you, whether it's a woman or a man, or any other identity that you possess, where you see representation, that it really matters to communicate that everything is possible, like you can achieve if you set your heart and your mind to it. And then going to grad school, for me, it was important to see that I have had mentors who understood where I was coming from in terms of like my background, but also who didn't look at me as a female or as a woman of color and judge my intellect based off of that. So knowing that the person I was going to work for in grad school valued my hard work, my chemistry knowledge, and all of that combined, instead of looking at my identity, was very crucial. And I found that in my mentor at Boston College, and that made all the difference in me pursuing my PhD. And here I am 5 years later after Holy Cross.
How about you, Kenny? Did you have any mentors during your time?
Yeah, not because of the change in career trajectory. And I look back at my time at Holy Cross. The primary influence, I guess, on just life in general and mentorship were more coaches than professors. I played as an athlete in football for my time at Holy Cross, but academically, I could think of several psychology professors who really I guess helped and encourage me to and help encourage me to kind of reinvigorate my love for learning and particularly mathematics and science. I think somewhere in between high school and kind of the first few years at Holy Cross, really was kind of struggling to generate kind of the love for kind of learning and science and knowledge. So I appreciate those one in particular, Professor Pat Kramer, was a professor in the Department of Psychology at Holy Cross. So I can recall her influence during classes and research and stats, and how she really encouraged us to work in groups and to think about how to solve problems collectively. So I think she was very, very inspiring, her work.
And taking that, expanding on, mentors and that sort of like mentorship theme at Holy Cross, and thinking about, where y'all are at right now in your professional journey and careers. How have you built professional relationships and mentorships in your career?
So for me, a lot of those so I tend to be an outgoing person, but not very outgoing when it comes to networking. I think it's kind of awkward to just like reach out to people and ask them about their experiences and hope that you might be able to help them one day and that they might be able to help you. So a lot of that professional networking that I did was mostly through official program type things. So like mentorship programs. So when I entered Holy Cross, I was part of like the Alumni mentorship program. So I also got paired with Professor Bellin, kind of like Sheila. And that was very instrumental for me. And then when I went to grad school, I joined these career advisory network programs where they actually pair you with mentors. And so it's kind of forced organization and forced professional networking, but it was a way for me to kind of get out of my professional network shell and actually form some really nice relationships. So I would definitely take advantage of programs like this where people are opting in to talk with you, because it kind of reduces that barrier of the awkwardness of reaching out to people that you don't know if they really want to talk to you or not. But I would definitely take advantage of things like this.
I'd like to say that for me, I think it's important to be in a scientific community that is supportive and that values your diversity. And I thought for me, that was very important, because a lot of times you leave graduate school and you try to make these connections and they're not necessarily natural or easy for you to make these connections. So one thing I found was helpful was going to smaller conferences that were more focused, or I should say more discipline focused or sub-discipline focused, instead of the larger conferences that were just like chemistry. I went to organic conferences, met people who were doing research that I could relate to their work. We could share information and build more natural, like collaborative projects, or talk to them about their research. But also for me, I think it's important, and the science community is no different from many other communities where diversity is a huge issue where people don't necessarily see you and see value in you because they judge you immediately based on the color of your skin or your sexuality or etc. And so I found success in like joining organizations where I know diversity is at the heart of what they do. So for example, NOBISHE, the National Organization for Professional Advancement of Black Chemists and Engineers, I'm currently part of 2 NSF-funded centers that have focus on diversity. The DCN, which is the Diversity Chemical Network, and that's part of a center called the Center for Computer Assisted Synthesis. And then I'm part of another center, which is a network for diversity in chemical research out of Emory University. And these opportunities are really useful because I'm working with people who value diversity, people who are well known in the field. But then I feel comfortable, right, as you're saying, to interact with these people. And I know that their mission is to increase diversity, increase awareness, and also to support research, and being really careful and aware of the struggles and the challenges that face diverse people in STEM. So that's how I've approached it.
I know that I appreciate you sharing those organizations. So one of the things that I will definitely do is I reach out to you, Andre, just to get a list of those organizations so that when we put the recording out there, we can add those organizations to sort of the description, and also just insert in some of those organizations that you just mentioned into the video. So thank you for that. Again, for folks who are on the call, if you have any questions, just feel free to drop it in the chat box as we go along. So what are some obstacles you faced as a student at Holy Cross, and how did you overcome them? Or maybe y'all were just like brilliant and great and awesome and no obstacles, Chris.
I don't want to dominate the conversation, but I had but the obstacles I faced when I moved here were substantial, okay? As an international student from Jamaica, I had to deal with the frigid weather and the lack of seasoning, okay? So those were huge immediate obstacles coming to Holy Cross. But culturally, this campus is very different from what I grew up with. I mean, the wealth, the privilege, and the entitlement of many of my peers was something that was quite new for me. Additionally, the assumptions a lot of my peers made about my own background, you know, as it relates to my academic capabilities, were not always positive. You know, it wasn't until I kind of established myself as, oh, this guy is like really good at chemistry and everyone knows that people started asking me to be study partners, or they wanted to study with me, and then my value increased. And I would say this continues beyond just Holy Cross. I mean, for me, it continued to graduate school. Like, I have bad memories of security officers asking me to show my ID to enter my own PhD building, when like my white peers were literally 6 steps ahead of me and entering the building. I'm watching them go into the building, no questions asked. But as soon as I approach the building, can I see your ID to confirm that you are a student here? And you know, this goes beyond just graduate school and those experiences. Like professionally, other minority like faculty aren't taken seriously, particularly women of color. Like, you look at like student evaluations are bad. Like, as an African-American man, your student evaluations are probably going to be bad because your students immediately don't value. But as an African-American woman, and all women have read evaluations, students have a ridiculous amount of like expectation they hold women to than they do to men. So the gender bias on top of the racial bias makes it so much more difficult for women of color in STEM. And that leads to like STEM POC, like in academia and industry, often devaluing their own contributions to the field, right? So you'll see where POC faculty don't publish necessarily as much as white cis men do. And it's not because of the quality of their work, right? But because we hold ourselves to a much higher standard, where we're like, we have to have work that no one can argue against before we consider publishing, while our white counterparts are sending every low-hanging fruit they have to a multitude of journals, and they've come to accept rejection as a part of the process, while for us, rejection is not an option. And so to combat a lot of that, you know, we really have to find communities where we feel supported. And so I think my challenges were significant at Holy Cross, from those backgrounds into graduate school, and even currently as a POC in STEM, those persist. And the statistics show, you know, I don't want to go off tangent and talk a lot about this, but there are numbers to back up the reason why the culture in the STEM field is predominantly cis white men driven. You know, it's been that way. 70% of people hired right now in STEM and engineering are white. right? And only 30 something percent are women. So the culture in STEM, the way you dress, the way you carry yourself, how you're supposed to speak, the language around how we communicate has been developed by white men for decades. And this is something that we have to adapt to if we want to succeed in this. And I see that not just in college and in graduate school and even professionally.
I think what you just shared stands by itself. And I want to circle back soon. I want to give other folks the opportunity to talk about the obstacles that they face as students, but also in your current professional careers in the STEM field. And then I want to circle back to what needs to be done and what is not happening. So let me give folks a chance to talk about the obstacles, and then we'll circle back, Andre, to like, what do you think? And for folks on the call too, what do you think is needed in terms of moving forward to propel, right? Folks of color in the STEM field to rightfully take up their place and space within this field. So we'll come back to that.
I can speak to a few of those. So I guess at Holy Cross, I had imposter syndrome, like big time. Like Andrea I was coming from Uganda. I'd gone to international school in the UK, but that was much more diverse, and diversity was at the core of the school. But coming to Holy Cross, I had a huge culture shock in terms of like for the lack of diversity at Holy Cross, in terms of like how people think, how monotonous, like almost like 90% of Holy Cross looked and what people did, all of that. Like it really took a toll on me my first year, to the point that I almost thought I was going to transfer from Holy Cross. But then going, like I would say like progressing through that, imposter syndrome came with other things whereby in class, I would just shut down, just keep quiet, not say anything, even if I knew the answer. And then other things that would trigger me would be, say, if you're in a class, right? You raise your hand to give an answer. The professor will say, "Oh, I didn't understand you because of your accent," right? Things like that. And then a white student will put up their hand, give the same answer, and the professor would start a whole conversation going off of that. You know, it happened to me a few times in a few classes where I would just completely shut down because the professor can't understand how I speak. You know, my tongue is too ethnic. So that would bring things like self-doubt, but also the lack of allies who are privileged, I think, is a huge challenge. I think some departments at Holy Cross are better than others in terms of like they're progressing towards that, whereby people who recognize their privilege are allies for diversity in those departments, which is not the case everywhere. Clearly, in grad school, that was a much larger problem. I think my department had only one female faculty member. And then the other one is when we speak about these statistics of that include lack of diversity or challenges people of color face in the STEM field, and someone tries to interpret your experience based off of data, forgetting what your reality is. You know, like someone, you'll be in a conference, you're talking about diversity, maybe of women, people of color, other things, challenges they face, and someone will raise their hand and say, "Oh, but the numbers that were published in this journal contradict what you're saying." You know, I think like as allies, people need to separate the reality that people are actually faced with versus what you're reading out of a journal or a textbook. So yeah, I don't know what else you're asking, but that's my little rant about that.
No, that was well said, and thank you for putting that out there into the conversation. Thanks, Sheila.
To go off what Sheila said, I was hesitant to answer this question at first because immediately when you said the obstacles, imposter syndrome jumped into my mind, but I didn't want to answer immediately because I haven't quite gotten over it yet. And so I don't know like how to exactly say I overcame that. But when I got to Holy Cross, everyone was so smart. And it's like everyone deserved to be there. And there had to be some sort of bell curve. And it was very, very weird coming from being the top of high school to this big field of people where everyone was top of their high school. And so it was very hard for me to try to find where I fit, and like the way people talk, they were just so confident in what they knew. And I was not confident in what I knew because I didn't know any of this. And then it was even worse when I got to grad school because I felt like I left Holy Cross feeling very confident with how I was trained, that I could tackle anything. I was a good learner. I knew all these proper strategies. Then I got to grad school and there was just like all these terms everywhere around me and people asking questions that I think their point was just to make you feel stupid and to show how much they knew. But at the time, it just felt like I didn't know any of this. And I still kind of feel like that a little bit in my job. I'm still struggling with it, definitely, because people do speak so confidently. And some people, you have to remember, people have different backgrounds and oftentimes they speak to what they're experts in. And so I'm trying to keep that in my mind. But I still feel it in my job today. So it's something I'm still struggling with.
You have to say one of the things that, just thinking outside of academics, one of the things that helped me is try to, I guess, maintain a balance, like in the spiritual life and in the arts, like family also. I can recall at Holy Cross, as thankfully my roommate was Guled Adam, whose father was Professor Hussein Adam, who lived right across the street from Holy Cross, and so, you know, his mom would often invite us, you know, all our roommates over, you know, for dinner, you know, cook for us. So it was like almost having like another family right across the street that we could like go to and like kind of feel have a sense of home and foundation amidst you know, whatever all the turmoil that was going around us at the time at Holy Cross. And it was a lot, but thankfully, I think with that kind of support, they provided kind of a clear vision, I guess, in a sense of hope and I guess a moral compass amidst like all the distractions. And I mean, I continue to struggle with those things. So recently, I've kind of tried to take up playing the piano, and you know, every day sitting at the piano, it's like a struggle to learn a new piece, to read music, to identify, and so taking kind of those lessons, just like the daily struggle of like trying to create something new, is kind of very relevant in the practice of developing software, because you know, every time I sit down at the computer and try to develop a new program, it's essentially a process of creation. So I'll begin to just appreciate a bit more just the struggle or the process of learning to create and kind of, you know, failing at something every day, but taking kind of small steps and kind of appreciating the entire like process itself as a creative struggle. So I like encourage you know, you all and kind of the students to try to kind of gain that balance between kind of the struggle of the academic pursuit and kind of struggles that you may face either creatively through the arts or spirituality itself.
Kenny, what I hear you say is, you know, the obstacles will be there, and to our students and young alumni who are watching this video or who are on this call. What are you doing outside, you know, to take care of yourselves, right? And I think that is really important as, you know, people of color. One, we give so much, but we sometimes forget to nourish our souls and our bodies and our minds. And I think that is really important. Going back to a point that Andre, you know, brought up in terms of the obstacles, and let's even put it further, the barriers that exist in the STEM field that are up against people of color, right? What can be done? What should be done? What are some of the things to remove the barriers? We need to eradicate and demolish and abolish, I should say, the system of racism that exists, right? But what are some things that can be done to remove some of those barriers, to create to open up opportunities, to help people of color to realize that this is for you, right? And your worth your work and your worth and your brilliance is just as good enough, if not better. But what are some things that you all think that is necessary and needed?
On more of a structural level, I think more programs to get people of color into the sciences and get early exposure to it is crucial. For example, to get into graduate school, if you don't have any prior research experience, you're at a huge disadvantage to just being admitted into grad school. And if you have no way of getting that experience, it's a huge barrier for you to enter into the field that you ideally would like to go into. And so creating more opportunities that are easily accessible to people of color without those opportunities readily accessible to them would be a huge thing to helping people get into these, I guess, like gateway kind of opportunities.
I think often, thankfully, I think recently it seems to be some progress on this, but I think often we kind of avoid conversations about systematic racism where they exist. So explicitly kind of recognizing that in our communities and environments that the problem exists and creating opportunities to have conversations about kind of real solutions, no matter kind of how difficult and challenging progressing towards a solution would be, and sometimes taking upon ourselves as minorities to have that responsibility, but also realizing that it's up to kind of non-minorities also to take up that baton and kind of move the goal forward. So explicitly holding them accountable when we feel they're not upholding kind of ideals of organization or institution that they belong to, and being prepared, I think also to possibly, unfortunately, suffer consequences of trying to hold institutions and authority figures accountable. There are like far too numerous examples that I can think of recently in the press of people and having to sacrifice their careers, their livelihood for upholding ideals of justice. But unfortunately, I guess until that day when the barriers are eliminated altogether, that sometimes has to be the price that we pay for courage.
I think there are several things that we could address, and I think many of them start at even younger, like high school preparation for college. A lot of minority students don't live in neighborhoods where their families aren't financially well off, where they can afford the most expensive schools. The high schools in the suburbs are usually better equipped. Advanced placement courses are difficult for a lot of our students who don't live in or go to high schools that provide these courses. And so they're coming into college with what some people would say less than ideal preparation for these STEM courses. Added to that, a lot of our institutions implement models that operate from a deficit standpoint, right? Where you are a student who's coming in with a certain, with a less than ideal level of preparation. And so we're going to put you in a pseudo remedial course. Instead of remodeling our courses, right, to take advantage of student strengths and to do some more innovative teaching on the part of faculty to meet students where they're at in their introductory courses and bring them to a level that they could be by the end of that course. And what that does is that contributes then to this feeling where students of color don't have that don't feel that they belong to that environment, because their preparation or so-called lack of preparation is reinforced on different levels in ways in which they're advised that you need to take this course because you're not prepared, this lower level course. You shouldn't consider this major. Or when faculty teach their courses, they teach to the bright students and they don't find ways to engage the students who aren't answering the questions, but always calling on the students who are willing to answer. Instead of saying to the one student who's not answering, what do you think? let me hear your thoughts, and guiding them through and empowering them and finding ways to let them become better at the material. So I think there are lots of things we can do. And I think a lot of it starts from how we teach, how we educate. There's some structural barriers that we can't necessarily fix, that I can't fix in terms of preparation. But I do think at the college level and at a graduate level, there are ways in which we can educate to make our students get to their meet their full potential without making them feel inferior.
Thank you for that. And it, you know, that's one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately is I feel like sometimes when we our approaches and the solutions that we come up with, it's from a deficit model, right? And not realizing that it's the systems that are already in place. Like, how do we shift the system to the systems that are already in place, and the, like some of the structures that can be, you know, tweaked. How do we make them more inclusive, you know, instead of creating other things, right? Because when you create other things for this population, what does that say? What are you signaling, right? Instead of tweaking the systems. And this is not necessarily off topic, but very synonymous to this. I think with the Golden Globes the other day, you know, to see that the leadership, no Black person is on that leadership board. And for me, it's like, where is that perspective? Where is that lens that is needed, right? And one of the things I also heard from Andrea was the representation, and from you all too, and how representation is so important, and visibility, you know, and Sheila touched on it in terms of, you know, having Andrea as a professor at Holy Cross and what that meant for her and what that did for her during her time at Holy Cross. For folks on the call, feel free to drop anything in the chat box while we slowly get towards the end of the session today. I'm going to turn it on to the panelists to sort of like talk about themselves for a little bit. So what are some of your personal educational and professional steps, or what are those steps that you've taken since you've graduated from Holy Cross? And so I think, you know, I'm seeing students on the call, I feel like they would love to hear, okay, you graduated from Holy Cross, this is what you studied, and this was what you pursued after you left. And this is how you got to where you are today.
I'll take that as a kind of a non-traditional career trajectory. I think after Holy Cross, I went to grad school at AU to study economics for 2 years. And so my kind of first job after that was at working as an analyst, as a econ analyst here in DC at the State Department. And kind of that, it's so you know, we're as a individual with masters, you're essentially competing with PhDs, and that I feel like that like competition is like impossible. Like they'll win every time. And so I thought about how I could, I guess, distinguish myself from kind of that expertise that the PhD in economics would have, and started kind of slowly began to learn, I guess, web technology. And so I kind of just taught myself programming, how to you know, program on the web, and eventually just by developing I guess relationships with bosses and supervisors, and just telling people know that I was interested in this, and that this was a skill I had. I eventually began to slowly accumulate kind of a body of work, you know, with developing the skill and capacity. And so that I feel like that kind of just kind of opened doors, just being in an environment where there was like so much work to do. Like no one essentially wanted to build the websites, but they needed to be built. And so I guess just that I kind of been developing the skill on the side, that kind of like opened an opportunity to kind of distinguish myself in that way. So say maybe the takeaway lesson is maybe finding you know, specific area of expertise, or some problem that needs to be solved in a current environment, and learning by like developing relationships with people and talking to people where opportunities exist to kind of solve those problems, and then kind of, you know, focus and like attack and solve the problem and gain that expertise. That kind of slowly developed into a career over time.
I know we have some doctors on this call, so if you don't want to talk and share.
I can talk next. So in my last 2 years of grad school, I was thinking a lot about purpose and impact. For me, I really wanted to work in an area that would address something along the lines of social justice. So when I was interviewing for jobs, like I would always question like the companies, like the higher ups that I was paired up with during the interviews. And when I interviewed with the company I currently work for, I came out feeling like, okay, I would be happy coming to work every day here because they work on rare diseases, which affect predominantly people of African descent. So I've had the privilege to just be able to work on things that I know would have a larger impact on people like me. Not because other diseases don't matter, but because I know like most pharma companies are not going to invest in research where there's not as much profit. So for me, thinking about purpose, impact was key in terms of my steps after Holy Cross. And to mention, maybe I went to grad school straight from Holy Cross. I think I had like 3 months off between like graduating Holy Cross and grad school. And then I graduated last year in May via Zoom.
Thanks, Sheila.
I mean, I guess I can say for me, I had a challenging grad school. My third year of my graduate program it's so funny. People always say your third year of grad school, third, fourth year are the most challenging. And I'm like, that's just a statement. That doesn't mean anything. And then of course, my third, fourth year, I encountered some challenges, but mine were personal. And I think for me, that was what changed my trajectory. I thought I was going to be the next big chemist. I wanted to, my aspirations were to like synthesize the coolest molecule. I wanted to be the next Casey Nicola or the next who's currently Phil Barron. I wanted to be the current Phil Barron of chemistry. But of course, that changed for me when I realized that what I should prioritize was my identity and who I was, and learn more about myself. And then that was the year I actually came out. It was my third year and I struggled a lot. And that really changed how I went about seeking advice and where I saw myself in the community. And, I was lucky to be paired up with some mentors. My PhD advisor, as Sheila perfectly spoke about, you go to graduate school, you need to have an advisor who is going to support you, who believes in you, not just by who's looking at what you look like or who you are, but they believe in your abilities and they have faith in what you bring to the table and they will never question that. And I was fortunate enough to have an advisor, a mentor like that, who when I had challenges when I was coming out and struggled a lot with my mental health issues then, he was like, you're going to San Francisco for a month. I'm sending you to do a collaboration with a coworker, an old friend of mine. And then when I came back, he's like, we hired this new professor who is a gay professor, and I want you to talk to him. And that was another mentor. So I think you have to find mentorship, from people who believe in you and who will support you. And you have to seek those out. It's hard, right? To as a person of color to say, I want to find a Black chemist in my case, or I want to know someone who's queer in my case. But I would encourage people to really just ask. That's the first thing. You will be surprised when you find someone who's gone through some of the struggles and challenges that you've gone through, that they can help you navigate this crazy world we live in, in ways that you might not find helpful until you start going through that process yourself. And so that was my story, I would say, on how I came to like start finding mentorship in people who I thought were, who looked like me, people who thought like me, people who valued the same things I valued. And then one mentor leads to another because you then become a part of a community. Like, have you met this person? You should talk to this person. And then it just spirals. And all of a sudden you have like all these, you're part of this bunch of people who you're all communicating with. And it's really awesome. I have to share that right now I'm part of this network. We have 5 chemists, 5 professors. We're all minority, Black, one's half Black, professors at liberal arts colleges. This is how specific our little group is. And we meet on Zoom literally once a month just to catch up and just to talk. And then that led to us reading each other's grants, reading each other's tenure documents, and we formed a little family. It doesn't happen overnight, but if I didn't reach out to this one other person, you know, who's like, we should connect with this other person, and then, you know, it just spiraled after that. So you have to believe that there are people out there who can support and help you and guide you in your field, and just reach out.
Thanks, Andre, and also thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that story and parts of yourself with us, and how you got to where you are today. I'm sure it came with a lot of struggles and pain, and so we appreciate you so much. I wish you had taken me to San Francisco with you, but that's in another that's for another day. One of the things that you, as we wrap up, you know, one of the things you also talked about is community. And I think it's also important for, you know, and it's community of mentors, community of friends, and community of folks who you jump on a Zoom call with and just be, right? And I think those communities can still exist as students at Holy Cross. And I'm, you know, in my role in working in OME, I have the pleasure of meeting students who are embarking on, you know, their own science, you know, careers. And I had 2 interviews with students today, and 2 of them were science majors. And I was like, yes, keep going. But one of the things that I'm always thinking about, I'm like, do y'all know each other outside of this interview right now? Are y'all, you know, being in community with each other, supporting each other? And I think, and your community can look diverse, right? I'm not saying that your community has to be a group of students of color. And I think that is really important, because when you go out there into your professional careers, having those established relationships and communities can go a long way, right? And when you're having that hard day in grad school or in your own professional career, it's nice to bounce back on your Holy Cross community and folks who understand you know, folks who are in the lab. I remember Sheila back in my time would be in the lab on Saturdays and Sundays and working on things, right? And it's always good to know that you were in the lab with that person, and that person actually understands what you were going through and experiencing. And so that when you're out there in your own professional world, your Holy Cross community can say, I remember when that person doing this, I remember how you coped, you know, during this time of your life or period. And so still being there for you. The last question, and I'm going to merge the 2 questions together. So what are some resources that students should take advantage of during their time at Holy Cross? And do you have any advice for current students of color at the college?
I would 100% recommend going to the career office. They were very helpful with me, like making sure my resume was up to date and all of that, and registering through the career advisory network. That was really great. I used it mostly after I graduated Holy Cross, but knowing about it, because when I was at Holy Cross, they like talked about it, how we had this great alumni network. And then when I became an alum, I was like, oh, I should tap into that alumni network. And when I was actually on the job market, I went through the Holy Cross Career Advisory Network and just looked for people that were working in biotech and just sent LinkedIn messages, said that I graduated from Holy Cross. I'm thinking about potentially going down this career trajectory. I was wondering if you have any time, you could tell me about your experience. And I had like a really good like response rate, probably like 80 or 90% of the messages I sent out to Holy Cross related people responded, and they were more than happy to help me. Some of them forwarded my resume. Some of them just told me about their experience. It was really, really great how far the Holy Cross network could go. But you really have to tap into the network. It's not something that's going to seek you out. You do have to actively utilize those resources.
You have to do the work. Thank you.
I would say faculty as one an underutilized resource. I mean, I've been able to help a lot of my students get jobs through connections I have. Like, I'll have like a friend like, oh, we're hiring. I mean, Sheila might be like, we're hiring. I think I got an email from your company, Sheila. You sent it probably. We're hiring, and you forward that to students, and but you don't know who to forward it to if you don't know the student, right? And if the students aren't expressing interest, like, I'm thinking about this field or thinking about this career, then you're not on their radar. So it's useful, I would say, for students to really reach out to faculty, have conversations with them. They might push you down, some routes to consider, some traditional routes that they know our companies should apply to. They're like, you would fit really well at this place, you should apply here, and so forth. So
yeah, just to re-echo what Professor Isaac said, and mailing career services. I remember when I was still at Holy Cross, Melissa, who is an Alana alum at Holy Cross, who used to work there. So I would go to her and talk to her about chemistry, and she would never understand anything about what I was saying. But anytime she saw like a chemistry shadowing pop up, she'll like send me an email, have you tried this? So I ended up actually shadowing someone during one of my Christmas breaks, which was informative. He literally told me, don't do a master's, go do a PhD, because he's basically, if you have a bachelor's, this is what you do. If you have a master's, what you do. You have a PhD, this is what you do. I could tell the difference. So after that, I was like, all right, I'm gonna go get my PhD. But so that shadowing program was very helpful. And then the faculty members, like, speak to them. They're far more connected than you as a student, but unless you go and knock at that door, like, no one's going to come and avail information to you. So use the faculty and their career services, but also network. I think at Holy Cross, I kind of regret not having networked enough. So that's something, if I was to go back, I'll probably do more of that. But
I would also add to that, I love LinkedIn. I can remember Mailing, when I came out of Holy Cross, that I think LinkedIn was still in its infancy. The network was still growing, but yeah, it was very effective, even 10 years ago. But also when like seeking out a mentor and networking opportunities, think of not only what think of like how to take specific actions and come up with a specific plan of what you hope to get from the networking relationship, and try to be very specific and like potentially identifying your weaknesses or strengths, and be prepared to have some vulnerability, and letting your mentor or know what you want from them, and kind of hold them accountable. Because it's obviously a two-way relationship. So there may be something you can give them, and things that you can take from them also. So think of it as a two-way relationship also, and always be prepared to pay it forward. It always pays off in the long run, giving that is.
Thank you all so much. Thanks, special, shout out and thanks to all the amazing alums who joined us today to share their stories and give advice and speak their truths, right? And I felt I wasn't a science major, but I learned so much from this call tonight. To the folks who joined us, thank you so much. And that's it. So thank you again. And I hope y'all have a wonderful Friday. And I hope y'all find time to pause this weekend. Take care.